Hey everybody, I wanted to go ahead and give us a bit of an edit of the live stream that came from the Misfit Games RtN over this past weekend in Oswego, New York. I showed up just for fun. I don't expect to be playing in Nationals, I'll be working, but I showed up because Levia has been having a great season, and how could I miss out on that? So, funny enough, I showed up just aiming to have fun and go ahead and feel the power of Levia, but I took the whole thing down 8-0 undefeated and on camera. So here's a bit of an edit of all the games and deck tech at the end. So my round one was against a fellow Levia player, LaShawn Francisco, and he was a really friendly guy. Said he was about 5 months into playing Flesh and Blood, so I sat down, like I said, really just to have a good time. We're playing a Levia mirror, and boy oh boy were his openers just some insane value compared to mine. I got on the back foot quite a bit and decided to take a pretty greedy line and not flip, since the only things I had were a Carrion Husk and an Endless Maw. What that ended up leading to was a turn where all I did was Convulsions to turn off Blood Debt and pass, thinking I have instantly lost this game. However, my opponent goes for Scab Skins, rolls a 1, and that's the game. For game 2, I was against the fellow Ethan in upstate New York, Ethan Oshley, and he's on Viscerai and actually won the die roll and decided to go second. And what that told me was that he was not OTK Viscerai, which was huge because I got to basically not mess up my sideboard and actually play knowing that it's a more aggressive Viscerai. And this turned into just a pretty standard game of Levia doing everything she wants. You can see I'm even controlling the flip in this scenario. I'm still at 14, even though I'm miles ahead of the game. And I'm setting up, well, if this doesn't kill outright, because 12 damage is kind of hard for Viscerai to block out with a lot of 2-blocks, I even have a Blood Rush in Arsenal, kind of going for that ideal flip into Blood Rush if the game needs to go that way. So that was a win. Round 3, I'm against the RtN winner out of Buffalo, Robin Avenoso, who's playing Prism, and she'd actually just beaten a Dromai, so she was feeling pretty hot. But we go into this game, and Levia just kind of did Levia things. I rolled Scab Skins maybe like 4 or 5 times this game, and hit like all but once, something like that. So that's a really big reason to want to bring Gambler's Gloves. I think Prism is just quite popular, and being able to clear Arclight Sentinels, being able to clear double Aura boards, all of that is just so much safer to do when you have Gamblers up. So the game pretty much snowballed from there. I used Husk early to deny a Figment to try to clump up the way that Prism draws, and sure enough, it was a win. We decided to then actually rematch our game, so this is a second Prism game now, where she wanted just another attempt at trying this matchup, and yeah, this time had a better developed board, a much bigger soul, but at the same time, Levia I had so much life to work with. I still had Husk in this scenario, still had Gamblers, everything's very much in my favor, and this wide turn at the end ended up taking it down. The Pulping Dominate was not good enough to actually get there, but the Claws on the follow-up made this a pretty assured win. So I'm counting this as one of my wins throughout the day because I didn't end up playing my round 5. I was the only undefeated, so I went ahead and just got a lunch break. So that's where I'm counting my true 8-0. My round 5, I just pieced out. So then we go into, it's out of order now, but this is round 4 versus David Elrod. David's on KO, and he is not really known for being a brute player. I was kind of surprised. He normally plays what tends to just be kind of very consistent decks every format, and so picking KO I guess makes sense. I would have thought maybe he's more of like a Kasai player this season, but he's on KO, and we play a pretty tight game overall, but there are a couple turns where Levia, especially like post-flip, just starts to absolutely control the end game, and the only reason that the life actually looks low on my end is because I have all the prerogative to just keep a hand and win the game, right? So sure, I have low life, but it's because I kept all those cards to go for this game-ending play. So there we go. We are now 4-0, and that's where I went ahead and took my lunch break. So this is now top 8. Top 8, I'm against an Azuri. And this is a friend of mine, Mark, and a fellow teammate of a lot of the Rochester area crew. I wasn't really sure what kind of Azuri list they were brewing. I thought it was a red line list, and this build ended up being more blue Zuri. A lot of D-Reacts, sigils were in there as well, but that kind of Azuri list is just a little too slow to deal with Levia. I mean, there are things you can swap into, like the right kind of isolate CNC, the right timing of a isolate humble, all that can be scary, but there isn't a lot of damage behind that for me to really worry about, so I just took away the game and even caught him on a bunch of 2 blocks here and there to go ahead and get the win. So then this was top 4 versus another Rochester player on Azuri. This is Ian. And funny enough, I just assumed that this was going to be a similar like control-ish Azuri build, mostly because the person I played in top 4 gave me a hint that Ian would be on a slow Azuri, but in fact they were completely opposite from each other. This is the red line Azuri. It was like 50 reds in deck, and because of that, the damage was trading really aggressively. Because of that, wanted to then go for a consume flip to shore up the game, but I messed up the pitch stack a little bit with a Dread Screamer barraging turn that I was off by 1. This game was still quite cool. I had a Shade and Death Hydra come in for 14, and then ended up closing it off of a lucky Scabs hit to still go 2 wide. But to be fair, I whiffed a Tear Limb from Limb that was just assuredly game if it hit, so Scabs got me back in the game there. So variance for variance, you know? Then we're in the finals, and this is not versus David, this is versus Sam. Sam was doing really well on KO all day long, and we played a really interesting game. I think if you're going to go back and watch any of the games in full, this one was quite exciting. The early game was so strange out of the Levia side. I took some really, really awkward lines to just go ahead and stay in the game, because as long as I can control the flip turn, Levia should be quite ahead at actually closing the game. It's really just KO maybe on like a pulping or reckless swing to end the game that comes easy to him. The rest is requiring to keep a large hand, which Levia just won't let you do with value trades with consumed at the end there. And then a Blood Rush actually shorted up. So that was the 8-0. And this is just the deck tech from the stream. We'll pass it off to past Ethan. I think the basis of it is like pretty simple still. All the tokens you need. Cold Foil, Might, and Agilities, of course. Cold Foil, Plasma Foot, of course. There is no Cold Foil Quicken, but that's okay. The chicken counts. And of course, the Demi Hero. None of that ever changes. Then the equipment, though, does get a bit funky. What I was looking at in terms of like what makes all the lists different is actually just like, it's mostly equipment. You know, like Mo Bogsley, the list he was playing had like a very different Kano suite. And then some people were like on hooves, some people weren't at all. So I kind of just put a lot of my sideboard into equipment. So you can see kind of the Kano loadout was Spoiled Skull, Hooves, Grasp, and Cloak. I still prefer this heavily into Kano. I don't believe in the whole AB3 plus Spell Void 2, especially since the way Mobogzi was doing it, his leg slot went to Null Ring Boots, which really feels wrong, because one of the things I'm trying to do against Kano is just never miss an aggressive turn. And Hooves lets you get graveyard fill and have an aggressive turn the moment that like something curves out really nice. You know, Hooves is just there. So I really, really like this kind of suite into Kano. Sure, it's AB1, so like you will take chip damage, but the idea is you know, you're kind of forcing Kano to keep cards on his turn, because if he's shooting you on your turn, then you can pretty easily send floating resources into Spoiled Skull. And if he keeps cards to play on his turn, then like you don't really care anyway, because then that means he took damage, and then you'll actually present lethal. So I still really like that loadout into Kano. Then we've got some of the other pieces, kind of the more techie pieces. I was a big fan of Crown of Providence in Mo Bogsley's list over, well, not necessarily like over Fleshback, but just as an additional inclusion, because into the Guardians, like the worst thing they can do to you is just threaten Tunic Pummel. And if they're playing around Fleshback, then they're just going to Arsenal the Pummel. So this card doesn't like do what it's supposed to in that scenario most of the time, because the Guardians definitely have time to only put like D-Reacts or the Pummel in their arsenal. They'll just play the whole game that way. So I do just prefer Crown of Providence straight up in the Guardians, and I had the room in this list to do it, so that was that. And then Gamblers is really just, if you know it's OTK Viscerai, then I really like Gambler's Gloves, because they don't do anything to you for the first like 5 turns. So you just, you know, roll Scabs every turn, and then into Prism, It's also really good. I don't think I'm taking it into Dromai. I might take it into Big Dragon. That's kind of like a maybe. But anyway, those are like some other alt slots. And then kind of the standard equipment of, you know, the big chunky Scowling, Scabskins, Apex Carrying Us. This is like when I'm playing most of the time. I mean, it's the only chess piece other than Cloak, right? So this is just ridiculous. Like, Apex Bonebreaker alone is so nuts. And, you know, the ability to stick it on, like, guaranteed damage, like on a Dominate or a turn where you know you're going, like, Dread into 1 cost. Every time you're going over 12, it's, like, real damage. So I just love the Bonebreaker. Like, you want to play it in those duel situations. It's either, like, an on-hit, denial, right? Or it's just armor in that case. Or it's specifically because, you know, you're making something a breakpoint, which is, I mean, most of the time happening in Brute anyway. What you don't want to do is like push a 7 to an 8. That one's kind of iffy, and I actually did do that on stream, so that's a punt. But you normally want to make like a 6 to 7, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, Scowling, super good, Carrying Us, good. And then Scabs, I never rolled Scabs, I think, the entire run. Other than, you know, when I had Gambler's Gloves. And I think that's a testament to the agility in this deck. In those kind of scenarios where you would be keeping a card to like get greedy with Scabskins, you just don't do that. Your turn now becomes, I'll spend that extra card making an agility, and then next turn there's like no ifs, ands, or buts about my action points. So you just like don't really roll. You can Hail Mary it. But sometimes you roll a 1, like we saw in round 1. Unfortunately to LeJean, who's actually standing right there. Then, you know, the claws. This is just too beautiful not to run. Shout out to, oh shoot, I forget his name on, I think it's Shaky Eagle on Discord, a Levia player out of the Philippines who put this together. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but like, it's made to be full art in theory, where like this art is reversed, so you know it actually all connects. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Don't get into legality with me. I have no idea, but you know, if the judges let me play with it, then sweet. All right, then we got the reds. Like I said, this deck has an insane amount of red 1-ofs and 2-ofs, mostly because last night at like 3 a.m. when I was building the deck, first of all, Talishar was down, so I wasn't really able to get any like games in on Talishar. I think I got like 1 game in, and it was versus Azalea, and I won. But otherwise, I had no test games with the list, but it's like pretty normal, good Levia stuff. But to make everyone's ideas fit into one, I just went all in on trimming down to like 2-ofs and 1-ofs all across the board. So you'll see that all over the place. But 2 Writhing Beast Folk I absolutely love. I've done it. I've gone to 2 Swing Big. I've bought into the Kool-Aid. I also just think it's a bit of a meta call right now. Like, Kasai does really well blocking out Swing Big with just the plethora of like block force she has, plus all of her armor. So it's weird to like want to side out a card this good into Kasai. So the way I've got it planned out is to not really side it out. It's just only at 2. So I'm never really like forced into playing the Swing Big if I don't want to. It's, you know, it's not going to clog the deck that much. And then 2 Slithering Shadowpeed. I talked about this one a little bit earlier with Deeper to Evil, kind of as the 3rd Slithering. But you know, we're just going through all these 2-ofs. Shadow of Blasmafet, which I'm mainboarding, believe it or not. Literally only because Daniel Correas out of Spain said that he really liked Shadow of Blasmafet in the list he was running, which is ridiculous. His list was already completely whack. It had Ivophidia, double Reckless in it. I don't know how you're playing like most of your hands, buddy, but he said he really liked Shadow of Blasmafet, so I'm in. I decided to go ahead and send it at a 1-of in mainboard, and I actually have not seen it all day. And then 2 Savage Feast. This card is insane next to Agility. You're never rolling Scabs with it, but it's kind of the same deal that when you trim away from a lot of 3-ofs, you just have all this flexibility of 2-ofs that like aren't really clunking. You know, opportunistically it can come up, but the game plan isn't like Savage Feast Agility combo. It's like if it comes up, sweet, and at least you can force play this in Arsenal off the back of like an Art of War, so you've got like real reason to want to Arsenal some of the opportunistic stuff like the Art of Wars and Agility, and then like Swing Big is early game plays like any flip turn. It's always good. 2 Pulping. This is mostly a sideboard card, but it is mainly for Dromai, OTK Viserai, Kano, and Prism. The idea being, I actually only ran 1 into Prism, but the idea being like, I'm just trying to plug holes, not really pivot the game plan when I play into some of like the bad matchups. I want to just, fill graveyard. Filling graveyard is the downfall of the deck into a lot of those bad matchups. It's not about adding a tech card that's really gonna add some new on-hit effect that they're scared of. That's not what's gonna mess up a game. You just want to be able to play your normal game plan. And one of the things that hinders your normal game plan into OTK Viscera is just you don't have graveyard fill. So I like the pulpings for that. It is like a lot of sideboard slots, as you can see, towards matchups that are kind of rogue, but it is what it is. 2 Hungering Slaughter Beast. I'm running these in red because they're just better next to Tear Limb from Limb. Man, this card's just like, your 2-card plays for 7, like that's on rate. You can kind of push it 7 to 8 with Apex if your opponent is down armor, like it starts to feel better. So I just like this card. You just don't need it in yellow. If it's in yellow, you're just never actually playing that as your 2-card play. It's just not good in yellow. It's more of just like a filler role. If you're actually trying to play out the slot, the red is just so much better. 1 Howl, 1 Guardian. These are not both in the main at the same time, but it's with the shadow on the main board, you kind of choose which one of these you want to run. Into any of like slower matchups, the Howl was insane. Into any aggro, I'm trying to run the Guardian, but like this card has not done anything at all. In testing for me pretty much ever, and then definitely not today. But I'm still just trying to see if it's good. Because it does have a ceiling, and if you fetch it out with Shadow and then like play your whole game plan around Flip, it's just like insanely impressive. So that is the goal. 3 Endless Maw, because the 3 ofs that we are pushing for, and you can see all the rest of these are just 2 ofs and 1 ofs. The 3 ofs that we're pushing for are the ones that you legitimately like want to see in multiple because they can be your play for the turn and then your arsenal as well. So that really is like the rationale on running 3 of. On the Blood Debt ones, they also, are part of your entire kit, needing to turn off Blood Debt and playing the Blood Debt. The Endless Maw, Dread, and Boneyard are all cards that if you see in multiple, they're just the most flexible cards. You actually like them in Arsenal, you like to play them, you like to block with them, especially because blocking with them early means that you can flip into consumed and like get them all playable. So that's the core of the actual 3 ofs, the best ones. And then 1 CNC. 1 CNC, just because 1 ofs. And you'll see that the Apex Bonebreaker, when you line it up with a CNC, is obviously like ideal, but it's not like you can actually play all 3 CNC with like mites every time. So I was trying like 2 main board and it felt fine, but honestly it just came up more so like if it's good, it's good. And at 1 of, that's the only time you're really going to run into playing the CNC is like if you make the call that it's a good play, you make it. You're never forced into it by drawing 2 of it. So it's really kind of how the entire rationale worked on the reds, which you can just move over here. And then the yellows through. The yellows, 2 Smashing Performance, sideboard card, just more graveyard fill into Kano as well, but obviously looking for Mechanologist. 2 Shade and Death Hydra, also a sideboard card, good into Prism as a popper. It's also good instead of some of your other yellows for when you're playing into the really slow decks, like if I'm playing against a Victor, Arachne, something like that, like absolutely taking Shade in, it should be absolutely free to play that kind of card. 1 Send Packing main board, because the same idea as like the CNC, if you ever do draw these together, 1 pays for the other. That's it, that's the entire rationale, 1 CNC, 1 Send Packing. They do basically the same thing. This one's a little bit better into Levia. This one's a little bit better like into D-Reacts. So I couldn't make the call. And I like, fleshing out my cost curve. So 1 yellow, 1 red of the exact same card basically. Then 2 Mark the Beast. This is kind of like your safety net card, either on discard or, to play and always turn off Blood Debt. But it's not really better than that. So 3 of meant you're kind of making your game plan contingent around like wanting to do something with the Mark of the Beast, which is like isn't always true. It's just an opportunistic yellow. Same idea with the 2 yellow Graveling Growl. I don't know. This one was like a weird card for me. I wanted to run the reds just because it's more damage. Like I'm really always trying to play the Graveling Growl if I see it, but there's enough cards that cost 2 that I sided away from being greedy and just ran it at yellow. But these are cards like you're really always trying to play. In second cycle, like they're kind of worthless. So I would like these to be red. I think I could have gotten away with 1 red, 1 yellow, but whatever. We left it like that to not be greedy. 1 Deep-Rooted Evil in the main board actually next to the Shadow of Lazapet every time, because at least with the Shadow, you always have something you're fetching out that does turn off Bloodburn baseline. And then the Slithering Shadowpedes at 2 of, this kind of acts as your third, which, you know, into your Art of War turns, it's just as good basically. It's worse to play from hand, it's worse to put in Arsenal, but a lot of situations where Slithering was getting played out in Arsenal was when I was flipping. And so if you're flipping, you know, off a 2-card 6, the Deep-Root is actually the exact same. So I've actually quite liked it. And then I'm going to pause for a second.
Just down up the road here. It's a Texas Roadhouse, and it is really good there.
Whatever happens to never play 2 pulping because they can't play off each other, it's because they only come in for specific matchups where you're giving your whole hand every turn. I'm taking the pulping into RTK side more than anything. And then like sometimes Big Dragon Droma. Alright, they're announcing top 8. Alright, 3 Blood Rush, you can't get away from it, card's too damn good. 3 Art of War. I was running this at 2 for a while, but I think, like, you are just so much more aggressive than a lot of the decks right now that you just get away with forcing Art of War hands so much more often than, like, I think you ever did before. And Art of War is just going to smooth over so many turns for you. It's got ceilings next to Savage Feats, Slithering Shadowpede, Deep-Root Evil. Yeah, card's just super good. And the flexibility of it being yellow pitches in for so many of your cards that I was running it at 2, and I did feel like I was missing the third in some longer games, so we're just at 3. Who cares? 3 Beast Within. I am still convinced, like, you never come off of 3 Beast Within. I like the ceiling of this card is too darn high. I want to see it as often as possible because I want the ceiling of it as often as possible. When it's not good, it's completely mobile. It blocks 3, it can still be a 2-card 6, it can be your pitch for the turn. I just want the ceiling of it so much that I just am going to have it at 3. I don't want to hear it. I'm at 3 at least. But I still do like the 1 cent backing yellow as well. I do understand the split like that, what the system was doing. And then 2 yellow agile windup. This card's insane, but this is one of the cards that when you draw it together really, really sucks. Unlike when you draw 2 Art of Wars together, at least you can like lead a turn off pitching Art of War, play the other one. 2 agile windup is just like not doing anything. So, you know, I'm very scared of drawing multiples of cards, but I'm still okay with 2 agile windup. If I draw 2 at the same time, we'll see what happens. But you know, that's like not the scenario I want. Hopefully, I've got like an Art of War or Blood Rush or something to do a play with the other, or maybe I can just like force a weird play where I'm pitching in and the other one just like pays for a claw or something, and that's probably fine. But like, you don't want to block it, you don't want to play it. All right, 3 Wrecker Romp. It's your, best blue 6. It blocks 3. It blocks 3. It's also got a new promo artwork that I wanted to test out. I'm not gonna lie, I really don't like it. I miss my extended arts with the signature. The promo is just not doing it for me. It's still a little dark. Like, I think if the foiling was brighter, I would really be into these. But it just like kind of falls to the wayside. You don't really get to see so much of the art. Like if like the fur was brighter, something about it is just like off. I'm not a huge fan. Not a huge fan. The promos came from Team Covenant, but I'm definitely going to go back to the extended art rainbow foils that are signed by the artist after this. So, unfortunate. My Wrecker Romps are not ideal today. 2 Tear Limb from Limb. The card is incredible, absolutely insane, but it's not one of the cards you generally want to see next to each other. It's possible to like play them off each other, right? Like one pays for the other. But the problem is you also have like a lot of blues that fall into that same space of like, you want the bad blue to pitch for the good blue. So you kind of have to make the call. Do you want to cut something more unique, like the Reckless Swing, or do you want to cut the 3rd Tear? And I'd rather just cut the 3rd Tear, because Tear doesn't just like automatically win you games. It is a good card, but I've definitely run into way too many scenarios where Reckless is just like forcing plays out of the opponent, just because the 2 threshold is just so much better. So I'm happy with 2. Soul Harvest, Reckless, Doomsday. Yeah, those are the one-ofs. Doomsday, 2 insane, 2 darn insane. Reckless Swing, I do genuinely think that you can definitely get away with not playing it, but the moment your opponents know you're not playing it, the game will get harder. That's just like, that's legitimately what happens. If they know you're not on Reckless Swing, the game gets harder for you. Because you don't necessarily have too many hit effects, but you have thresholds that matter because of Writhing, number 1, but then also Reckless Swing. And I just love the synergy of like forcing thresholds because of Apex, like the pumps on Writhing, guaranteed Reckless kills is just sick.
one Soul Harvest, whatever. It's good. A lot of 2 of blues. Once again, you're going to see a lot of the 2 ofs getting trimmed all over the place. 2 Smashback Ailhorn, same deal. You don't want to draw multiples of these, and it's not a very modal card. It doesn't block. It is very good in Arsenal, so I do think you can get away with running 3. But if you double draw them, you don't really want to play them either. So it runs into that issue of what you do want to do with the 3-ofs, where you don't mind like playing 1, arsenaling 1. That is still true with the Smashbacks, but you don't have the extra ability of like burning them out if your arsenal is already set with another piece that you don't want to move. Because Smashback is like not a synergy piece on the next hand you draw. It's mostly like an in-between play where the hand you draw just like lets you burn Smashback, have a good piece or a good hand. Arsenal is something that then works for the agility. So it's like a little clunky to want to arsenal it, but it is fine. So I think you can run 2 or 3. Like I don't hate it. 3 Dread Screamers, 3 Deadwood. I should have sorted this out a little bit beforehand, but these are the 3s that I was already talking about. Like they're fine. They kind of like hit ratios you need anyway. Like Dread Screamers, you want some extra count beyond just the reds because even the blues, having blocked them, banishing, and flipping, are just very, very strong to have on demand go again. The cost curve's still good to throw the 1 cost. They have a Rumbler, just it being a 6. It's also got flexibility of what it can do when you draw a discard. They're just good cards. 3 Barraging Beatdown. I think this is like your strongest blue in pitch stack. It really is. And one of the things you can do, I didn't do it today yet, but when you go for like really easy, like turbo consumed kills, where you flip consumed with a really high amount of blood debt, and you basically know that you need to end the game in like 2 turns, Barraging being one of the blues that you pitched early is the most reliable blue. All the other ones are going to act mostly as resources, so if your opponent is like on a full blockout cycle, because they think that like you're going to mill in 2 turns, when you drop your hands of all blues, Barraging is the best one. Because on the full blockout cycles, you can just play go again, barraging away their last card and attack. So it's like 0 effort kill in like your deep pitch stack. It can also attack its buff onto a writhing. The card is just so good. You can burn it early game, you block 3 with it. Very good. And then also in terms of like easy kills and pitch stack, you just have convulsions, but it's not good enough at 3, especially with some of the new blues you're trying to fit in. But that's the whole list. That's the whole list. All right, you ready? We're gonna flip it together, team. We're gonna flip it together, team. Silken Form. Okay.
It's a card.
That is.
That would make a lot of people very happy.
That is a card in Flesh and Blood.